All right, we are back at WWDC. We're sitting in these seats the same time last year. And once again, I've got the developers of Halide and Kino. Thanks for coming, guys. I think you were exactly who I want to be talking to about this because we have had the first major redesign of all the operating systems in a very long time. I mean, I think the first time it's happened all at once, so that we've kind of got this completely unified look. Also a new camera app, a new photos app, new AI features. There's a lot to go over. So I did make some notes, so I'll be referring back to them. But a lot of it is I do want to hear what you guys think of it all. You developed some of the biggest apps in the App Store, or some of the best apps in the App Store, I'll at least put it that way, especially for creatives. So first off, just my overall reaction was this kind of felt like a bit of an old school WWDC in the way that there was no curveballs. We didn't have any hardware. There's no huge emphasis on AI like last year. Like the last 3 years kind of felt like odd events in a way compared to the past. And now I felt like we were a bit more like it's about the software. I don't know. How do you guys feel?
Yeah, I think this is like the closest to a pre-2020 WWDC as far as the vibe. Like around the developers, there's new toys to play with. Also, it's really interesting how it's been slowly sprawling all of the events again in Cupertino. We've been seeing more and more people. So it's like really, it's sad it took 5 years, but it's like really hitting the really peak of what Apple used to do around this time of year. And I've been doing these since like 2006, 2007.
Yeah, there's just like, it does feel very electric, you know. I think because to your point, you know, there was all these big changes. There were a few dubs pre-COVID where people just dropped everything they could to just install the betas first. And like, I feel like that hasn't really, that was this year. Yeah. That hasn't really happened in a while. People are like, okay, that sounds pretty cool. But
I was only looking at the beta on a friend's phone. I didn't bring an extra.
I was going to ask you, did you install it?
I'm not running it right now.
Oh man. Yeah.
Because I mean, it's a pretty big change as you go around. But I mean, I think that's where we can dive into right away is the visual changes.
Right.
My first impression as it came up on screen was if you blur your eyes, if you're looking at a distance, it actually is not. It is familiar in many ways. Like of course, there's a lot new, and that's why we can talk about it for an hour. But I think a lot of it won't be too shocking to a lot of average users, and that actually kind of gave me some comfort going into this. I'm like, oh, are they going to throw everything out and we'll be in a completely new universe? But that was just what I think. You guys actually have to design for it. How did it feel to you?
Well, it's actually kind of fun because we're in kind of a redesign cycle where we were going to work on a redesign and decided to like pause some of the work because we're kind of seeing where things are going.
Yeah.
And the last redesign we remember was like iOS 7, right? And I don't know how many years ago that is. It's a different lifetime. But the iPhone wasn't that, like, I'm not saying it wasn't a big deal back then, but now the iPhone is like, it touches every aspect of our lives.
Well, and I should also say, if anybody's sitting in front of a computer or a phone right now, Sebastian wrote an amazing article just leading up to this that really went in depth on the history of how we got here. So even though you're trying to predict what this would be, I think 90% of the article is still very relevant just to set up the context. And you've got a lot of great screenshots in there and just reminding us like what was the journey of skeuomorphism. And, you know, you designed at Apple previously as well. So you're kind of aware of the history of what does this design language mean now in 2025.
Right. Yeah. Thanks. It was such a big change with iOS 7 that I was kind of expecting something like that again, where you really lose that familiarity.
Complete reset.
Your total reset, right? And then you think about like, oh, like what about my dad or like or my mom? Like it's like really hard when all the icons change and everything completely changes. And it takes a lot of courage, and there is a lot of big changes. But like you said, I think they balance that familiarity really, really well. And for us, I mean, what do you think, Ben? Is there something where like, I don't think any part of our apps feel super out of place all of a sudden.
Well, I think that like you were sketching things out months ago, like before all of the rumors were popping up, and luckily I think that your original sketches they're pretty close to what it's going to be, and I wasn't like, oh god, there goes my summer. So. But also to your point, you were saying like our parents, how are they going to respond to it? I really appreciated, I don't know if it was the keynote or the follow-up State of the Union, they put a lot of thought into accessibility. So if you have issues with low contrast or motion sickness, you know, it has clearly been integrated from the ground up that it'll accommodate everyone. So yeah.
I think that's a really important thing to keep in mind. Like Apple has like maybe the best accessibility team like on the planet. So when a lot of people are looking at it and they're like, whoa, this is crazy. I don't know if I can like read this. And it's like, well, for one, it's the it's the first beta, right? Like you're going to see something really extreme pushed to the furthest end of it, and there's going to be some refinement happening, obviously. But also, people think about that stuff, right? This is not some fly-by-night operation. Like this is what, like those were my designs. My designs, when I made these like little concepts, I didn't think that much about accessibility because it was a concept and I made it quickly. This is probably something they worked on for years. So someone's going to have to thought about that.
I mean, it feels like compared to the mock-ups you did, they actually went further as well. If you were to predict, how much do you think they're going to dial it back? Because when I look at it, some of the animations, they are very beautiful, but there's a lot of motion. There's a lot to it, and I've already heard a number of people being like, I would dial that back. I'm I feel like the distractions may not be worth the beauty, and I don't feel that way. I think it's incredibly beautiful, but there is this balance. I mean, after iOS 7, we did have a lot of making some of the bolder changes more mainstream or something.
Right.
If you were to guess, how much might this shift between beta and release?
As someone who installed the iOS 7 beta 1, let me tell you can expect a lot of, you're going to see a lot of, I hate to say churn, but it's easier to go extreme in the first beta and test out some ideas than to, in a later beta, be like, oh, actually, let's just crank this up to 11. So in the first beta 1, also keep in mind the beta a lot of people are taking screenshots of is a developer beta. And so that's designed just for developers to test their apps to make sure it doesn't totally crash on launch. I think the public beta comes out in a month. So, and like, spoiler, you are brave enough to have run the first beta, and we were just spotting all these bugs. But it's, again, this is not a user-facing one. So I would not judge anything that you see right now. I would use the keynote as more of like the ground truth of what to expect.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
I try not to comment on the beta too much, where it's like, oh, it feels like this, or I really hated this feature, because there can be some surprisingly big changes between now and then. So take it as a bit of a mission statement of like, this is what it's going to be like, and expect a little bit different. One of my favorite parts of the keynote was showing those screens with the physical glass that they were laying over and looking into it, and listening to some ATP was talking about this, and they were saying like that seemed like it was just for show. They were trying to guess like, did they design like this, or was it just presentationally it was interesting?
Like after the fact, they put something together.
And they guessed that it was just for show. And I do not feel like that. If I were to design a glass interface representing the real world, I would 100% be printing off a million magnifying glasses and like finding every gemstone I could to look through.
Right.
Because how else do you emulate it? You're not going to do it based on you're not going to imagine how does the edge of a piece of glass distort. You want to see it as a reference. I don't know. How do you imagine they designed these things? Like, what do you think of this?
No, I think you're completely on point there, because like one of the things I mentioned in my post, if you look kind of at the history of stuff, a lot of people before this redesign were conceptualizing like, oh, it's the end of flat. We're going to get this thing back called skeuomorphism. And that's what a lot of people refer to when they look at old icons. Like, Friday My Friends was a leather icon. Like you had like, everything had like gradients and shadows and things were made out of metal and that kind of stuff. And it was like, I don't think we would go back to that, because you basically have to build these effects and build them in, and they're static. They'll never live. And if you look at like how effects work in the newer releases of iOS, like the dynamic island, it behaves like a physical object, but it doesn't necessarily look like it, right? So it's not styled like a drop of liquid with a bunch of gradients, but it sticks to stuff, and it morphs, and like it has behaviors of physically accurate objects. And that's why I'm like, I think what they did in that lab is kind of like analyze like, hey, how do physical objects like real glass behave, and how do we encode that behavior rather than just putting a lick of paint on it that looks like glass, right? And that's what a lot of people kind of missed in their predictions, I think, was just the extent to which Apple would go do their homework on that, and then like,
well, like the way you mocked it up is very much, I imagine you did in Photoshop. Probably.
Photoshop and Blender, like crazy like material dynamic stuff, because you can't do it in
what they have to be doing now is like, no casual designer can just jump in and recreate that. Like you can't draw the distortions manually. This has
you could, right? But then
I mean, I can't. I'll speak for myself.
In the Aqua days you used to, and the long tutorials about you do this gradient and then the floor.
But it was achievable with effort. I don't think it's really achievable in Photoshop anymore.
Yeah, exactly. And then that's your problem. Then you have to, if you have like a background that would be static, like it's inherently dynamic to its background, right? It's adaptive and liquid and morphs and that kind of stuff. And I'm sure like we'll quickly get our design tools to catch up to that. But I think the larger movement we see there, like as a designer that I see at least, is okay, this is but one effect. So like in the future, you're going to want to be able to make things like this happen.
Yeah.
Like, and this is what you would call shader design. Like really, it kind of meets 3D VFX and UI, and like it's kind of where we're headed. So it can like actually behave and live in a much more dynamic way than just being like a flat piece of button that you press on a screen, like piece of color, like.
It's interesting because you have to go above and beyond physical accuracy in order for something to be visually pleasing.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's funny, like in visual effects, for the longest time, it was too expensive to use ray tracing. I think Pixar wasn't until Monsters University they added ray tracing, and they would just fake everything. And just because something like has real caustics doesn't mean from an artistic perspective that it's right. If you talk to game programmers, there's so many crazy cheats that they use to make things feel right when you get into an elevator in a game or whatever. So even going beyond like writing the shaders to make things physically correct, what kind of cheats are they going to do for like low contrast and to make sure it looks right with the proper background? And that's where the actual creativity comes in, and you're not just engineering.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, to keep things exciting so we don't just say how amazing the new redesign is, let's say, okay, looking at liquid glass, what's the best and worst thing that you saw in the way they represented it in the keynote? I'll go first. That just in the worst category, I think there are some legibility issues in a few places. Just like we used to have this dream of phones will become transparent at some point, like it'll actually be a piece of glass with text on it. We have all realized that would functionally be useless. Mm-hmm. There are moments where a piece of glass comes down, and right now I'm like, I could read this much better if there was a solid background on it. So I think there will be some places where we need to, I would like to see a little less clarity in the background and a little more clarity in the text. But best wise, I mean, I just love the distortions of the corners. I mean, which is what I keep going back to.
So
just that,
neat.
yeah, the way that letters bend underneath the magnifier, beautiful.
Yeah, I think that legibility is going to be tricky the first couple of betas, but it's kind of like, I'm thinking about at some point Apple Music added that ability to pick, it would automatically pick a primary color based on the album art. Like this is a solved problem. It will, it can be solved when they invest enough into later builds around that. But yeah, it's going to be tricky, especially with third-party apps. If they're doing something super hacky, I'm going to be very curious about how they optimized everything using legacy code that's decades old. Because to do those effects, like that requires a lot of horsepower. And I totally believe what they were saying as far as they had to wait until whatever A series we're up to now, A16, something like that. Like it just wasn't fast enough to do this without making your phone really warm.
Yeah. No, I think that's a really good like point to it. The worst thing I saw was kind of some things are clearly still kind of work in progress. Like if you have a colored layer of glass,
right,
some colors just flat out don't look very good, and that's just it has to be able to support every kind of color. There's not going to be all the cases mapped out. But conversely, the color wise, like if you go to change your wallpaper right now, the button that sits underneath it is kind of like in the dark, and so it reflects the color of the wallpaper you swipe over. Like if you want to see just like the specular highlights, like it's so neat to see stuff respond to like other things that are happening on the screen. Like to me, that's just like,
yeah, that light is generated from objects around it and hits the glass. Yeah.
Super cool.
Pretty cool. Yeah. Let's go more specific. You guys make camera apps, and Apple does too. And they redesigned it. Yeah. And I mean, I feel like in some ways this will be good for you guys because it's they simplified a lot. In responses to my videos, I hear a lot of people complaining. They're like, I want all the pro tools. Like, why doesn't the camera app work the way that, Samsung has moved more in the direction of like, here's every feature, the menus are deep. But now we're seeing a very consumer first app from Apple. Most of all, what's your response to seeing there? Is like, if you're going to open the new default camera app, what does it evoke for you?
I think it was kind of in a way overdue. Like the camera app to me felt like there was a lot of, like if you look back to the history of this design of the camera app that you have on iOS 18, like it was introduced in iOS 7 and it was this crazy radical shift, right? It's actually really funny. Like if you look at all the phones and camera interfaces, iPhone, Android, everything, they were all totally different.
Yeah.
And then iOS 7 came out.
And they're all the same.
And they're all the same.
Yeah.
Like literally every single camera looks the same.
Yes.
And that makes sense because like, I don't think there's a single app that's more important. Like this is a hard problem we have. Like you don't want to open a camera app on a phone for the first time and then be welcomed with like a 10-page onboarding that says like, hey, here's how you take a photo. Like you just want to take a photo, especially if it's like Apple's camera. So I think it's a really hard thing for them to solve, but two, going in a way where like people can more quickly get the results they want is just a really natural progression for that. And they had to keep adding features to it, right? Every iPhone every year has like a new cool photographic feature, if it's a new lens or maybe there's a new mode or something. And it kept getting built in this really beautiful minimal iOS 7 design. And so at some point it's like, okay, it's starting to buckle a little bit under the weight of all these things that have been added. And I think they're really trying to solve that in an elegant way. And I like just like basically saying like, okay, photo video, you know, like we make two different apps for that. Yeah. I really relate to that. Like you are in one mode or another, and then go more specific from there. I really like it. I mean, there's probably a long road ahead, right? I could see more iterations being done on it, but I like what they've done so far.
Yeah, I mean, we are guilty of having an app that's 8 years old now, 7 and 8, depending when you start counting. And we've added features over time based on the evolved iPhone camera capabilities. And actually, something we were talking about even last year was, okay, what can we cut now? What is redundant? The different modes. But as an example, the first-party camera, I wonder how many people, since they now have ultra-wide angle lens, how many people use panoramas on the first-party camera, right? And it was probably due for a cleaning. And what's really interesting to me is how they've handled discoverability, because even though they show two things, I think one detail I noticed was when it launches, it hints that, okay, you can swipe over. Because like one of the most like hated problems with usability is if you hide things, it looks clean, but then you forget that feature exists. Yeah. So when it launches the first time, it gives you a little hint, you can swipe to find the other stuff. But most of the time, it's going to be a clean experience for our parents who have no idea why they would want to run cinematic mode.
Yeah.
So I think they did it as elegantly as they could within the constraints. Also, the entire purpose of having a third-party ecosystem is to let other developers fill in the gaps of stuff that would be a distraction for you. As much as Apple has all of the resources in the world, there's always overhead of adding features to your products that there's no way to keep a product having 100 features and keeping it simple.
Yeah.
So for us, it's also an opportunity of like, all right, we can focus on the edges that they're not going to want to keep throwing into the first-party camera. So I'm excited. I'm going to be able to put my son through college. So,
yeah, right. Yeah. Well, and another example of things that are becoming more redundant is portrait mode. I think a lot of people still use it that way, but you can also change photos to a portrait afterwards now as well. So there becomes this blending of like gradually features need more or less emphasis over time. I mean, right now they're all still there, but
I was going to say like portrait mode is another example where that came out before the LiDAR sensor.
Right.
And so it had to be a discrete mode and then throw it in. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so I noticed playing with the beta, again, I don't know if the beta is real, but one huge change you can't tell until you touch it is what they've removed is the swiping between modes now on the image. So it has always been that as you can go through portrait, video, photo, all that, just by touching the whole screen. Now it keeps you in the mode. Like this does not change anything. And you need to swipe on the actual text of photo, video to switch between them. My first reaction is that's great because I accidentally do this quite often. And especially that there are so many modes. Like I end up in Spatial when I'm trying to take an Instagram.
This happens to me all the time.
I do mostly just use the two modes. So that is great. But at the same time for an average, I mean, it also means to get between the two photo and video, your thumb needs to come all the way down. So there's a bigger move now to do that change, which I do go between the two quite often. So I need to play with this before I'm actually sure, like, is this a step forward or back?
But to your point about the portrait thing, kind of, what used to be a mode is now always integrated. That actually kind of happened with video too, right? Like I actually use the quick take thing pretty often now where like if I'm like framing a photo, I'm like, actually my daughter's doing a really cute thing, like holding a little bunny or something, and I quickly swipe it to the right, and now I'm taking a quick video clip. I feel like there's some really clever design solutions around like problems like that are just clearly getting kind of integrated into this, and they're done through like make no mistake, like really impressive technical work, like that kind of stuff, like quick take, like. There's a reason why you can see the camera kind of like blurring a little bit as you change modes, because like the whole camera basically has to be reinitialized to like, okay, now we're doing video recording and like clear the buffers, and there's a lot of really impressive stuff happening behind the scenes. And the same thing with this portrait mode thing, like Ben mentioned, that used to be like you had to take two cameras and compare the photos from the cameras to like compute a depth map, and like now your phone can both do that with the LiDAR and like AI. It makes a really good single shot depth shot. It's like, oh yeah, like with technology, they're actually solving their way kind of out of the problem of having too many discrete modes and complexity.
And I mean, personally, I would actually turn off all the other, like I would be happy with it being harder to get to everything other than photo and video.
Yeah.
Because even things like slow-mo, you can do everything except cinematic and panorama. You could just do within those modes, really. And like you said, panorama, I think we all use it less than we did in the past, even though it's fun. So I would be happy for those to get even a little harder to access personally.
Yeah.
Speaking of the depth mapping, they also brought the spatial video that has been available on the Vision Pro, where you could turn any image into a spatial image, which for anybody that hasn't experienced it, I mean, it's so striking in the Vision Pro. Like it made me stop taking spatial photos because I'm like, well, the post version of it is just as good, or it's better because I can take it on my real camera,
right,
or my large camera, right? So you could have a full sensor, some depth of field, and the image becomes completely 3D. So I'm pretty certain it's the exact same processing that we're seeing, except now it just happens as you rotate your screen, the image looks like it's in 3D. Are people going to use it though? Like, is it just a party trick?
I was kind of like, oh, that looks like Flash and it's cool keynote material. And yesterday I was kind of like looking through the beta and I was adding a wallpaper. And one of the options is like a person. And in this case, it was my wife. And then it just takes a bunch of photos from that person. And I was just tapping through like, oh, neat. Like, this is pretty cool. Then it was like one of the shots was like a photo of her with my baby, like right after she was born. Mm-hmm. And it's a muted light in the room and everything. And like I moved my phone a little bit and it was like, it was not quite like the Vision Pro experience, but it did transport me to such an extent that it literally just took my breath away. I was like, whoa, okay. Like I just got like hit with all the feelings and I'm like, oh, this is actually pretty powerful.
Yeah.
Like it does bring some of that experience from Vision Pro to your iPhone. And I could see like them using this in a way to showcase like, hey, there's something here. Like this is very substantial. Like spatial stuff is, it sounds really cheesy, but it's a real extra dimension, right? Yeah. That you add to something.
It's part of the reason I got less interested in shooting spatial videos, especially on my phone. I can do it. That's interesting. At first, I was like, yeah, I'm going to do this. Mm-hmm. And gradually, I was like, you know what? I know that the software will catch up. If I shoot in 2D, 4K, I can get much more quality. Let's say I use Kino and I'm shooting in log with a LUT applied. Like it's going to look better. And I know in a few years, I'll be able to turn that into a spatial video too. So it'll probably just look better.
It's just funny to me how like the amount of machine learning and AI that went into this feature that no one is talking about. Like yeah. If this were a startup, they would have just made $10 billion in funding. Sure. Like, oh my God. But then Apple's like, yeah, this is just a 2-second thing in the keynote.
Yeah. Nobody will know.
So good AI stuff.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah.
I think it was especially hard for them to tell this story previously with Vision Pro because so few people could experience it.
Right.
This was the whole reason I covered Vision less than I thought I would, is as you use it more, you're like, how do I share this with anybody? The experience is so internal that it's very difficult to communicate it and kind of share the excitement. So I don't know. I hope it translates. I haven't seen it in the beta yet. So.
Right. Yeah. It's like nothing is worse than telling someone like, you just got to see it.
Yeah.
It's
right.
Like, well, okay, cool.
Yeah.
Cool
maybe
story.
Someday. What else does let's move on to the Photos app.
Oh yeah.
There's a lot of complaints. Probably some of people have been mad all year about the Photos app. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting because like in some ways, if I put my designer hat on, some of the changes are not structurally that big. Like let's say between what they did last year and what they're about to do in the new year, that like it's all the same content. It has just been moved. Instead of being in a straight line, it is now over in a tab. So instead of being on top of each other,
right.
The image feed with recent photos and then the collections below it, they're now beside each other. But I think mentally, people had a very hard time just figuring out what that meant. It's like structurally, it's not that different, but the effect is enormous and everybody got completely lost, including me sometimes. I don't know. What did you think when you saw it?
I have really strong feelings about the Photos app because for me, like I really wanted to like it because I like the idea of like, I think personally Apple should take more risks in like just taking something and rethinking it from scratch. Mm-hmm. Like if like one of my dreams is like FaceTime, contacts, phone, and messages are become one app. Right. And it's going to be really controversial and people are going to hate it. But then like at least we're down 4 app icons.
But I can see that argument. I could imagine the article.
Right. Yeah. Right. Yeah. And then like the Photos app to me like had same thing. Like it had kind of been unchanged since iPhone OS 1 and they added more tabs and memories and these things like cool, like fundamental rethinking. But then when I used it, I was like, this really does not work well for me. Like for my workflow, it was very frustrating to use. And it kind of reminded me of like there's this meme in design where people are just like, the best design there is. And people misunderstand Apple as being this kind of company where like the best design is the simplest possible design.
Sure.
It's like actually oversimplification is like one of the worst things you can do to an app, because if you want to respect your users, you want to have a degree of complexity that they can learn a little bit, and then they get the flexibility out of it of being, not oversimplified. It won't rob them of the time they need to navigate it over time, instead of like, okay, it's easy to pick up now, but it won't like work as flexible as it could if you use it every day. And I think this new change potentially fixes that problem, where it was rethought to be simple and discoverable, and you see all these cool features like the memories and stuff, but you can still get in and out and get your stuff done.
Right.
So it's interesting. As a photographer, one just wants a feed of most recent photos. Cool. That was cool in 2007. People today, and it's very easy to lose sight of this if you've been using the iPhone forever, especially if you're close to our age, is a lot of people use these apps as their own little social network. Like the shared album feature. Oh my God.
Oh, that's awesome.
My wife and I we just post photos of our kid there. And similarly to how if you talk to young people today about how they use the Find My app as a little mini social network for keeping track of their friends. So that's all to say, the Photos app, you almost shouldn't call it Photos. Like it should be like the Photos network. And so from that perspective, I totally understand why last year it was like a total rethinking, because there's so many features that people use now today. And then this year sort of correcting, because just like with the camera app, you need something that is approachable enough for our grandparents that if they accidentally swipe out of the main app, why am I in the cinematic mode, right? So it's like you have to swing the pendulum both ways till you find something that's solving everything for everyone.
One thing that I think leads to a lot of confusion that's not related to that tab issue is people end up in the difference between sort by date added and date taken, which so many people I've had reach out. So I just want to kind of do a PSA here, where they're like, oh, the worst thing about the new app is my photos aren't being sorted by date added. I think that's the default. It's like if I just downloaded a photo, I want it to be available immediately. I never want it to get buried to whenever it was taken, because I don't know when it was taken.
Yeah.
But you can change that currently. I don't know how it's going to work in the next one, but there's an up and down arrow where you can easily switch between filtering by added and taken. So just if anybody hasn't found those buttons, they can save you a lot of pain. Because I know there's people
I didn't know this.
There's people think that it is, they switched it. They're like, oh, the worst thing about the redesign is now it's the other sort order.
Right.
And they just ended up in that sort order somehow.
Wow. Okay. Because I go to recently added now, like the album, to find those kind of things.
So does it default to date taken maybe? Then that's why everybody's confused.
I think that must
it must
be
default.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Cool. Great tip.
Okay, good. I'm glad it was worth the time. The other thing I noticed is the thing they didn't do is update the cleanup tool within editing in Photos. So this was like the object removal, like the sort of generative fill. And, Android users have made a lot of hay this year by posting videos comparing the Samsung object removal to Apple's. And if anybody hasn't seen these, it's pretty amazing the way Samsung does it, that if you put your hand in front of half of your face, it'll regenerate that other half pretty accurately, and Apple will basically scramble it.
Yeah.
And totally fine that the first step didn't work. I was just a little surprised that we didn't get any more attention to it.
Yeah.
I don't know. Would have been nice.
I wonder how much of that also is Apple putting a line in the sand, much like how they won't just add moves to your photos.
Right, yeah.
Right.
Like at what point the Shipithesius of photo removal, like we don't want to go down that path.
Yeah,
right?
we don't want to make it too good.
Yeah.
Yeah, that definitely feels like a philosophical thing. And then there's also the other thing this year where I feel like, and like credit where credit is due, they're just like looking at the Apple Intelligence stuff, and they're just like, we're just going to release this stuff, and it's like super full baked, and we're really proud of it. You know what? Good for them. Great. Like if there was like, with much fanfare, they only like had improved cleanup like a little bit, people would be like, wow, like, okay, well, I'll let them wait for something substantial, like if they were going to go that way.
Another theme overall around the OS is just photos. There's more dynamism generally, that the interface moves around, but also photos on your home screen will be moved up and down based on notifications. There's kind of just this overall feeling of it all feels a little bit more alive, a little bit more interactive. I like this overall theme that they're moving towards. I don't know, I just wanted to draw attention to it, but it was cool.
Yeah, it's neat to see. The default wallpaper too is like, two sort of like glassy discs.
Yeah.
They also move apart. Or like, it's kind of neat. Like even that changes. Like,
Yeah.
Cool.
Do you guys have anything else about the Photos apps, the built-in stuff before we move on?
I just want to like put attention to that. There's a new feature in the camera app that will remind you.
I know what you're going to say.
Okay. Is this for later?
No, go.
Okay, yeah. There's a feature in the app that will now tell you when your lens is super dirty and you need to clean it so you can get a better photo.
The main reason people think their phone sucks is the lens is just dirty all the time.
Your camera is dirty. Clean it right now.
And
it's the
like,
biggest problem people have.
Yeah, I mean, they'll take their whole lifetime of photos with completely smudged up lenses. And it's hard for me to believe anybody would be listening to this show right now that doesn't know this, but I'm sure there's someone out there that's not cleaned their, and even to the point that I think that a lot of when you get a new phone, oh my God, this new camera is amazing. A lot of that is just like abrasions. Yeah, it's clean.
That's hilarious.
But it's also just, as a camera gets older, it's, it just gets dirty, and eventually you can't really clean it all off because this goes straight in your pocket instead of lens capped like a bigger lens. So just be very aware of that. Like, your lens determines the image quality. So,
and what I also saw, this is a big factor into it. I think this is I actually don't use a case with my iPhone. And so I put it in my pocket, and it just always the lens is kind of rubbing up on the fabric in my pants. If you have a case, that doesn't happen. So I think a lot of people, especially with bigger, bulkier cases, especially have this problem.
Right.
So,
So I did actually try that with the beta yesterday. I just smudged
you deliberately
sunscreen from my
super
forehead
gross.
and rubbed it, but it didn't kick in. I haven't seen it. Have you seen it?
It was probably inferring your artistic intent.
Oh, right. Yeah, Vaseline.
I have not seen it.
Vaseline detected.
What was the lab testing situation for Apple engineers to make sure this future worked?
Yeah.
It's like a big pot of spaghetti sauce, and you're dipping in there.
The green slime and
All right, we can kind of move on to some of the other design stuff then as well. So, I mean, I just wanted to touch on, for anybody that hasn't watched the whole keynote maybe, but iMessage had a lot of changes in terms of live translations, polls being added to group chats.
You can make it look really bad.
Yeah, which kind of brings you back to 2000s vibe of installing Winamp skins and letting or using re-edit to change the launch screen for Photoshop. I don't know if anybody else did that.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
It's funny.
Res-edit.
Res-edit. That's it. I actually sent a screenshot of the keynote shot of the iMessage backgrounds to my wife just to see how she would respond, and she's like, "Oh wow, it's like my jailbroken iPhone," from the old days. So I was like, "Whoa, okay, yeah, that's the vibe."
change the carrier name in the upper right,
like a Batman logo instead.
I loved one of my favorite accounts to follow is old Mac OS themes with some of the wacky stuff
I
there.
remember those days.
Yeah. But the polls feature I'm really excited about because just setting up for Dub, we're getting some all these friends in town trying to pick a restaurant.
We went to Benihana.
Yeah,
I'll say it. I'll go ahead and say it.
So if we had polls,
you wouldn't have gone to Benihana.
No, we would have gone to Benihana, but no one would have
Right.
tried to weasel out.
Would have been quicker, right? Sure, yeah. And then other features. I mean, things I think I will use often. I love that there's auto translation built into text messages and the voice calls as well. I got to see that demo in person just before I came here. This is great. I mean, when you travel, if anybody's tried to deal with hotels and there's language barriers, it seems to work pretty well. All the other companies have already demoed this stuff. I think Apple's coming a little late to it, as happens kind of often, but most of us have iPhones, so I kind of don't care that it was, everybody in this room does. So the fact that it was on a Google Pixel a while ago doesn't help me at all.
That's how I feel about those phone features too, right?
Exactly. I'm just glad it's on. Now I can use it. So
yeah, I think there's a lot of things there that I've been excited to check out for the exact same reason. I think the call screening stuff on the Pixel has always been I gotta know why, but I get a lot of spam calls. And I was just like, oh man, this is such a quality of life enhancement.
I love the fact that you can now put people on hold who have put you on hold. Just let them wait there. How does that feel? Yeah, exactly. No, I think that, and I don't know if it's just because my name is now in mailing lists, but just the amount of junk mail last few years due to generative AI or whatever, it's just shot through the roof. And this feels like it's a vaccine for how things have gotten as far as just recapturing your own attention.
Yeah, that's nice.
The demos I just got to see before I came here were about the Apple Intelligence updates. So I have a lot of fresh things in my mind, seeing how it works. And we just clearly got a pretty different approach from last year. We had very big promises about what Apple themselves were going to do with here's the features we will give you with Apple Intelligence. Obviously, a lot of that was kind of forgotten, or some of it didn't happen. But I'd kind of forgotten about it throughout the year, actually. I just wasn't. That's not the most important thing about my iPhone. So it wasn't that impactful for me. What I wanted and what I feel kind of happened now is Apple's just doing a better job of being the platform for AI generally. here's where Apple Intelligence can help you. They're offering some different APIs to the local model running on the phone to developers.
It's huge, yeah.
And the amazing thing that didn't click with me till this demo was seeing Shortcuts integrating both the on-device model and also the secure cloud model available to everybody, so that using Shortcuts, like, you just have full AI access in creating a list of things to do, and not only to Apple's secure models, but you can also use ChatGPT as well if you want to, just feed it documents, feed it images, and have it do something with them. And I don't know about you guys, I've never really used Shortcuts that much. It's just hard for me to think of what to do with it.
Right.
And now you can write it in plain text. So in a way, it's normal users with less than no programming, they don't even know what no code is, can write a description like, I want my computer to do this, and it'll start doing it.
I liked that they had, at least on the developer side, a separate video they made around AI safety, which you don't see anywhere.
I haven't seen it. Yeah,
it's developer oriented, but making sure users don't put glue on their pizza. I don't know if they touch on that, but they're taking a very thoughtful approach as they're releasing the models of okay, you have to consider users, which again, it's difficult to compare Apple to a lot of startups that are just trying to move fast, right? So I'm really excited about the foundational model because the main, on the developer side, talking to people who are using generative AI for trying to code, it's controversial, but a lot of developers have found a lot of productivity out of it, but the cost of using these services can quickly add up. So the fact you can run it on your own device and pay nothing is amazing. Or they really did a great job around integrating with ChatGPT and other models. So if you want to pay a premium and run gigantic models in a farm somewhere, you can do that. But it makes it in a way more accessible to every developer who are just sort of AI curious, I guess. So
yeah,
it's pretty exciting.
Yeah, to me, it's really to your point about the shortcuts. The best unlock you get from AI when it kind of works with you to get stuff done that otherwise you just wouldn't be able to figure out. And yeah, I don't really use shortcuts, but now all these little app intents and shortcuts from all different apps can be pulled together, and you can just describe what you're trying to get done and it'll do it. Seems like kind of a really big deal that people don't quite grasp the magnitude of.
Yeah.
Right? Right now, what you can sometimes do is you can screen share with something like a Claude or one of OpenAI's models, and it'll tell you how to use Premiere to achieve a certain thing. It's if you build your app with Apple's APIs, it won't even need to tell you where to click and do that kind of stuff. It'll actually be able to build little workflows for you and stuff. And that's wow, that's really cool.
Well,
yeah.
It kind of comes full circle because Apple Script, the idea was idea you could use plain language to automate things, and everyone could be a programmer. And it turns out using plain English with that technology was a nightmare. And then, Shortcuts tried let's make a drag and drop, and Shortcuts added a lot of the plumbing for this. But then LLMs are that little missing ingredient where finally it took decades, but now people could be programmers and automate workflows that were previously inaccessible. So
it's Apple Script with magic.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. That's the little thing we needed, I guess.
Yeah. One thing that was striking to me was noticing the difference, but that they hadn't actually made the what is the Apple's secure cloud AI
private cloud compute.
Private cloud compute.
Yeah.
That was not made available to developers, but it is to Shortcuts. So it's kind of this strange situation where you guys won't be able to integrate it in your app. You can use the locally running models, but average users can do it within Shortcuts. So
interesting.
I imagine this is kind of a scale thing. They warm up by putting it in Shortcuts, see how it handles it, because there's a cost to them with that isn't there with the local model. When your iPhone runs AI itself,
it's free.
It's free for everybody except when you charge your phone, battery life.
Right.
So yeah, I don't know. I mean, hopefully the developers get it as well, because it'd be great for you to have all of these integrations available. But without telling me what the ideas are, have you guys had any ideas of how you'd use AI? Yes, you can make it a yes or no answer.
We will never use AI to generate images.
That's a good answer. I like that.
I can tell you all the
answer.
things we won't use it for.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a big one.
But I mean, just the ability to, in plain language, and that first party photos app, the fact that you can just type in looking for stuff, we don't want to rebuild anything that you can already do with Apple, but your immediate mind goes to, what was I doing last week? What was that photo of that painting I saw? So yeah, I think just making things more approachable, but it also makes me wish we built different types of apps so that you could describe, if you're very casual, I want a photo that looks dramatic and this and that. So for, again, we target photographers who they don't want any of that. They're camera nerds. But I could see something for like casual users who would be just mind blowing, kind of like what the promise is with Genmoji. But I would love. Actually, I hope Apple's eventually going to do something like that for the Photos app.
Yeah, there's little things that I can think of for like workflow stuff that's just really nice. Like depending on when we can integrate something like that, like just looking and helping you organize your output is a really big one. You know, photos and videos in general, in that sense, are becoming more of like a giant pile for all of us. And like with Kino, you get a lot of takes, and they mostly have like your date and time and that kind of stuff. We'll have to see. Like, we haven't done a very deep dive on the APIs yet, to see what's possible with these models.
It'd be a great shortcut is like, look at all my videos as they come in, tell me which ones are 1 second long and completely black, and delete them immediately.
What does not have audio? Right.
Yeah,
Like these kind of things are very fundamental things that I think we're going to look back on as like, oh, computers used to be so stupid, right? They couldn't figure out that this file was just a throwaway. Like eventually you'll be able to detect if it's a bad take too, right? Yeah. It was just like you just go, it's going to do that again. Yeah, sure. Like, I'm not sure if the current models are up to that task quite yet, but that's the kind of stuff I'm thinking of in terms of the kind of AI we want to add. Like, we want to help you with your process to get stuff done, not just be like, oh yeah, now we make the video for you.
Yeah, that's my thought about every new AI feature is like, I don't want it to do the thing for you. I just want it to augment my ability to do a little bit more.
Like VO3. So like just...
yeah, exactly. Yeah, you turn the camera on and it's just generating live. No thanks.
We are actually sitting here. This is not like actually generating.
How do you know that?
Look at all of my fingers. I've got real fingers.
Have you guys heard about the prompt theory?
Yeah.
I did like all of the way that ChatGPT was sort of made a little more accessible throughout. Even that some of the models are available in Image Playgrounds, which I have not opened Image Playground since it came out. But that's part of that is because like I don't want Apple to have to worry. I don't want them to worry about making the best model. Like, I don't know. Maybe they want to have the most cutting edge model out there, but I don't personally care about that. I'm happy to let the model be separate from my hardware manufacturer. So seeing them allow ChatGPT to be better and better integrated, and still I'm hoping we'll see some other models made available throughout, like if Shortcuts could access Gemini and Claude and everything else, that'd be cool.
This was like a big aha moment for me, because at the end of the keynote, they were like, okay, Xcode now has like, you can chat with like, and there's like ChatGPT in there.
Right.
What you didn't see is after that, the State of the Union happened, and they kind of got more, it's like mostly for the developers and get into the technical nitty gritty. And they were like, hey, here's Xcode and here's the ChatGPT thing, but you can also use Claude. And like the whole audience just like cheering.
Totally,
about it.
But it was one of those things that if they didn't do it, I mean, Apple would be falling behind. So it's like really great.
Yeah, and like
fully integrated.
Apple doesn't make all the apps in the App Store, right? Like that's why we exist. Like I feel like they're a great position to kind of just be like this intermediary to just like empower you to let you use all these latest and greatest models. Like maybe they shouldn't even chase the whole like model frontier there. Like there's so much good stuff. Just be a great platform for them. I don't know. What is a better platform than like you use on your Mac, right? Like in your iPhone. Like why not?
Well, I mean, it goes back to what we were saying earlier of the purpose of having third-party APIs is to let other companies play to their strengths and keep your company from being distracted. So it's nice that they're opening up. You still want to, though, provide a batteries included experience where the last thing you'd want is to boot up your Mac and have to pick from 5 different models. Like, what the hell's a Claude? So they want to. What's nice about Apple providing a solid experience out of the box also is that they're ecologically conscious. Like they've given those great presentations about how they're using renewable energy.
Right.
They have safety rails built in, so they need to have a batteries included experience. But they're not going to build the world's best model around cooking, around recipes.
Right.
Like I would hope that there are better things for them to do.
Well, what they've always done best is the hardware software integration. So it makes sense for me to for them to pursue the best small, locally running model in the world.
Totally.
I would love to see Apple do that because they can make it more efficient. They can make it more useful to developers. And that's why I want it to be so good, is for the developers, not for my iPhone to be doing the craziest things out there. I'm happy to let the wild stuff be open to whoever wants to tackle it. Obviously Facebook's done a lot as well. Like there's so many options right now. So
I kind of lose track of it at this point.
Exactly.
You just mentioned it. I was like, oh yeah, there's Meta too.
So
right?
I don't.
It's okay if you're not in 2 months. Anything you know is going to be
I know.
So don't blame yourself.
This is why I still haven't done a real AI focused podcast, because I don't release I'm not every week I don't hit an episode. And there's just no point. Like, you have to be daily to be covering AI. So
It's kind of amazing how fast that's developed.
yeah, this is basically our annual recap of what's going on.
And this will look hilariously out of date.
Next week.
Yeah, next week.
By the time it's released. iPad is, I'm not a huge iPad user. And a lot of the reasons I've never been able to get nearly as much done as I can on my Mac. We finally got what everybody's always said they wanted, which is basically a lot of the iPad behavior is much more like a Mac. We have like a real pointer, has a windowing system. It has the 3 traffic light dots in the corner and menu bars at the top. Mm-hmm. Are you guys going to use your iPads more after this?
We've talked about now we got to build an iPad app.
Yeah, I was like, this actually is extremely compelling. Like it was like in our chat, we mostly communicate through iMessage, and it was that section of the keynote. We were like,
it's time.
It's time. Yeah, because we do make a camera app for iPad. Actually, one of the things it's kind of funny. Like one of the features we ended up building but not shipping was concert detection, because it's like it would be really bad if people see our app being used to like block your view at a concert with like a giant iPad. So with AI you can detect it. Like, okay, maybe we don't quite ship that and prevent people from taking a photo. It's just philosophically bad. But I think to loop back on the thing I said earlier, like it's really great to see that Apple was like, hey, what if we don't make simplicity the ultimate goal in the iPad, and we just lean into like the complexity and the power of the Mac? There's really something there. People want to clearly use these amazing, powerful devices for something, but like, when I use an iPad, it just kind of gathers dust next to my MacBook. And it's because of that kind of stuff, because of being able to, the magic of working with multiple apps on a big screen is where the power lies. And I really think they might have nailed it this time. It looks really, really good.
Yeah.
And also macOS notably is more iPad-y, right? Like
those corners are very round.
It's pretty round.
Yeah.
There's a chicken and the egg problem of, if you want more powerful iPad apps, you need more powerful iPad apps because you need users who treat the iPad as an actual, like, closer to their Mac. And so for us, like, we have utilities that we build for various photo processing things, and we use a Mac Catalyst app. And like, we wouldn't ship it on an iPad because it's tricky to know what's the actual market for this versus building a Mac app. And so what's really interesting is, in a few years, as people are using their iPads closer to where the Mac would be, how it could just inject more life into the ecosystem. And then, I hate to say the Mac going away, but like the Venn diagram between the two are getting so much closer, and in an elegant way where it doesn't just feel like they added a root button, like, okay, and now it's a Mac.
Yeah.
Like, it feels like they really thought about it, and they can also shed all that carbon code from 1988 that's still stuck on the Mac. So yeah,
I think a small symbolic representation of that, and for me as someone who basically got started in his career as an icon designer, this is the biggest deal to me. There's now one consistent settings icon across all platforms.
I didn't notice, but yes.
Our long national nightmare is finally over.
You're right.
Like, it used to be different on the iPhone. The iPad and the iPhone had the same one, but then Vision OS had a different one, the Mac had a different one, the Watch had a different one. It's over.
One more iPad thing. We are recording a podcast in person right now, but let's say we weren't. They showcased a way to basically use internal tools to the iPad to create remote podcast recordings, where even chatting with some people watching this, I think they didn't quite grasp how it works. But like right now I use Riverside to do that. Mm-hmm. You have a call and it captures the local recording of both users, syncs it to the cloud, and now you can download high quality audio and video. Now they're showing that the iPad can do that too. So you can use Zoom, you can use, I was about to say Skype. Obviously, I'm living in the past. Let's say you can use Zoom or
ICQ.
Yes, and
Yahoo Messenger.
It'll upload the local recording to the Files app, and now you can download that and edit it, which is awesome to have it just built in.
Super nice.
Super weird that they only showed it for iPad, because can I not do this on the Mac? Is this an iPad only feature?
I was curious about this too. I haven't dug into this, but that also came with talking about microphone selection, right? So there's some more like content creation tools there. And I was like, does the iPhone get it too? I don't know yet. I haven't really looked into it.
They also mentioned something about the way that AirPods audio works, but I'm super skeptical about it, because like when I make phone calls on my AirPods Pro, I'll find that often people can't hear me. Like the results are much less predictable than the speakerphone than any microphone on my iPhone. So I don't know. Did they do something to make it more usable?
That was one of the first sessions when they opened things up. I was talking to the engineers about that, because for legacy reasons, the AirPods with a microphone on effectively worked like hands-free headsets, just the protocol-wise thing. And on the latest AirPods using, I think, the W3 chip, they managed to find a way to produce high quality. And the level of engineering where they're doing repeated verifications of packets going back and forth. I think they said they try 9 times to make sure you don't drop any packets of audio, because then what's the point in using it as a microphone?
Yeah.
So it's something that like we'd been talking about this with Kino, and I think that it's going to come up with a Kino release that you will be able to use your AirPods as actual mics.
Yeah. Do you think it will be? Do you predict it will be good?
I think it'll actually be good. But the thing
it
is,
doesn't need to be the same quality as the Shure mics in front of us now, but like just give me something decent.
Like to your point, the new thing we have in testing now is like being able to like hard select your audio source in Kino, right? Because you're like, I want to force my audio through this Shure mic that I have hooked up, or maybe I want to use the iPhone internal mic, but only this mic. You know, you have several mics on your iPhone, and AirPods we're just not even going to have AirPods in there, because why would you want to record AirPods?
Yeah, it's always terrible, but it's for a software reason, not all hardware.
I think if my understanding is not complete of it, but I think when you have both audio like being sent there for playback and recording audio, there's a big quality loss there.
Previously, you could record from AirPods, but they made it deliberate that you couldn't do it in video recording mode, because it was in kind of drawing a line in the sand of like you really don't want to use them for recording video. And so now with the latest changes, it will be, my understanding, available. So you could do it before, but it's also the Apple way of like they're not going to ship something that's garbage.
Yeah.
That could be really interesting for creators.
I think it's pretty, and there was a little other thing too, but you can now use it as a camera control. So you can start a recording
Trigger,
and they extend it to us too, so we can kind of decide what to do with that.
Nice.
So let's say you are wearing your AirPods and like you want to use it as like a trigger. I'm not sure how we're going to integrate it yet, but like we could do something like show a little countdown at least, so it's not like immediate, like you can take your AirPod out, that kind of stuff. It's not like you can use it in your hand when it's not in your ear,
right?
But
right.
It's cool.
I mean, it's still good. I like it a lot. There's a great anecdote I was posting this week. I was listening to the 12-hour interviews with Christopher McQuarrie about Mission Impossible, just about Dead Reckoning. He talked for 12 hours.
That's incredible.
And but there's this great anecdote in there where he was saying during the lockdown, a lot of actors weren't accessible. And so much of the ADR, a large percentage of the ADR was recorded on iPhones in actors' homes. They just did it themselves, talking into their iPhone.
Wow.
And that is mixed and mastered into the final Mission Impossible movie. He's like, yeah, it's all over the place.
Wow.
When I get comments on YouTube, which I still get, of people being like, professionals don't use their phones for photography, video, audio.
Yeah.
It's like, that has changed.
Yeah.
So
that's kind of funny. Like now, 28 years later, coming out,
Yes.
just to see like the fact that I don't even think that's a headline anymore. Because when 28 Days Later came out, it was this revolutionary thing. They were shooting a movie on digital video, mini DV tapes, and now like, and you can now fit it in your pocket, and it looks like it's a cinema film.
Yeah.
It's just like we take these things for granted now.
Right. Yeah. I was talking to Adam Lisagor about this yesterday, where we were part of that wave where like the 5D came out.
Yeah.
It's like, you could
Same.
take like your SLR. We were like, and you got the shoulder rig. Like everybody got the shoulder
Vince
rig. And
Foray inspiring us all, and
Yep. Yeah. And it's like this new generation instead like is now getting like iPhones that are capable of doing this kind of stuff. And it's like so cool because it doesn't require you to drop all this money. But like the only thing that's limiting you there is your creativity. Like, you can get such crazy good results. Like, okay, not that like quite shallow depth of field that like a lens offers you maybe, but you can definitely get started and learn everything you need before you buy like a big rig.
Yeah, or you can tell a complete story. Right. You really can just, if you work with the limitations, you could tell any story you want.
Also, just culturally, you're going to hear stories that previously were inaccessible. Like even going back to Sean Baker, what was it? His first film was shot, Tangerine was shot on an iPhone, and it was like something you probably couldn't, the content you wouldn't get a studio be like Marvel, like, yeah, let's make this, I'm going to fund that. But it's going to be, you're going to be able to hear more voices from people that are going to be closer to what you'd see. You wouldn't be like, it's good despite the picture quality.
Yeah.
Right.
It's going to really empower a lot of interesting stories.
Before we run out of time, macOS.
macOS.
The second closest to my heart. I mean, I guess I use the iPhone a little bit more, but some of the design differences struck me more. It felt like a bigger change than iOS. The rounding of the corners of Finder windows, just everything. It looked more like a completely different universe than the others. What were your main takeaways?
A lot of cranky developers are going to be like, this isn't my OS 10 Tiger, and it's like
not my Mac OS.
Give it a month. Give every update. Sure. I just turn off social media. I'm going to wait until the final version's out. I'll give it a month.
The weirdest one is flipping the Finder face, where the blue is on the other side. I'm like, no, I don't know. I'm against that one. Like, you see it in a small icon, you're like, I don't even recognize the icon anymore.
The little border around it. Yeah, I don't really know how I feel about that. And to go back, I don't want to tire everybody by talking about icons all the time, but now this is really the end of non-round-rect icons. Like previously on macOS, you had some icons that were, a little bit outside of the border. Like you look at Xcode, the hammer is a little bit above it, and preview out this little loop sitting next to it. You have to be in the round rec now. So it's one icon for everywhere. Although they can be composed with these different glass layers, which is kind of crazy. That's like a whole new stack, I guess.
Yeah.
So that's also a big.
I also don't want to pass over Spotlight, which maybe that seemed like maybe the most functional thing that I'm going to start using this all the time. I never really got into any of the third-party launcher apps.
Same. Yeah.
But so many people swear by them. I know I will use it more if it's built into the system. So
it looks really good, but for me, the caveat is just like on my Mac, for some reason, Spotlight just doesn't work. Like it doesn't find files. So I was like,
maybe they fixed it.
If it works, that'd be great. Okay. But yeah,
I'm a longtime Alfred user, but sometimes like the indexing, it isn't as good as a first party solution where it's going to hook right in there and be up to date. So yeah, I'm going to play around with it. Again, like I'm the developer nerd, so 2 key shortcuts. Yeah. But like, yeah, it's almost surprising that it took this long to add a feature like that, because there was a litany of services. Going back to Quicksilver, I don't know if any Mac nerds remember that. Oh, it looks so cool. That generation of like really over the top animation. But you know, it's one of those things that like naturally belong in the OS to integrate with your workflows. And then now you're going to see with, again, like shortcuts and this beautiful synergy. So yeah, I don't know. It's going to be a change of my workflow.
And notably, that replaces Launchpad. So previously, the few people that use that sort of, the icon, but it kind of looks like an iPad home screen, that now just opens Spotlight with a few rows of icons underneath, but not like the thing.
That makes sense. I mean, I don't think that was that commonly used, and people that were using might be better served by something that can do a little more.
My one friend that uses it is going to be devastated.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Well, there's going to be a lot more to talk about. So thanks again for joining me, Ben, Sebastian. Everybody check out their apps, Halide, Kino, and hopefully we'll talk to you again next year.
Awesome. Thanks.